Choose the slow mountain, a warning against shortcuts. It's better to climb slowly up the right mountain than to climb fast up the wrong one. Sahil Bloom. We live in a world obsessed with speed. We want faster results, faster success, faster everything. We optimize our schedules, automate our workflows, and search for hacks that promise to get us where we want to go in half the time. As a productivity enthusiast, let me be clear. There is nothing inherently wrong with efficiency. If something can be done better and faster, by all means, figure it out. The problem begins when speed becomes more important than direction. We spend a lot of time asking how to get somewhere faster and not nearly enough time asking whether there is somewhere worth going. And for those of us trying to follow Jesus, there's another question we have to ask. Even if the destination is right, is the way right? Jesus faced this same temptation. Before he preached his first sermon, called his first disciple, or performed his first public miracle, he spent 40 days fasting in the wilderness. There, Satan approached him with a series of temptations, each challenging Jesus to prove his identity or pursue his mission apart from dependence on the Father. The final temptation is particularly interesting. Matthew tells us that Satan took Jesus to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All this I will give you, Satan tells him, if you will bow down and worship me. At first glance, it seems easy to dismiss. But look a little closer and you'll discover what makes the offer so seductive. Jesus came announcing a kingdom. Matthew has already introduced him as the long-awaited king. The prophets anticipated a day when God's Messiah would reign. Jesus' own ministry would eventually culminate in the declaration that all authority in heaven and on earth had been given to him. In other words, the kingdoms weren't the problem. The bowing was. Satan was offering Jesus a shortcut to something that was already connected to his calling. He could have the authority without the allegiance, the status without the suffering, and the crown without the cross. Put another way, there was a faster way. It just required compromise, and Jesus refused. That's what makes shortcuts so dangerous. They aren't always shortcuts to bad things. Sometimes we compromise ourselves in pursuit of genuinely good things. We want to provide for our families, build meaningful careers, grow our businesses, expand our influence, build healthy churches, reach more people, create things that matter. Those can all be good mountains. But a good destination doesn't sanctify every road that gets you there. That's why Jesus' refusal in the wilderness matters. He wasn't just rejecting Satan, he was choosing the slow mountain. The slow mountain is the path where obedience determines the pace. Jesus would eventually receive what Satan offered prematurely, but through an entirely different path. Paul describes that path beautifully in Philippians 2. Jesus humbled himself, took the nature of a servant, and became obedient even to death on a cross. Then Paul writes, therefore, God exalted him to the highest place. Notice the order: humility, obedience, then exaltation. Unfortunately, we live in a world that often tells us to strike while the iron is hot, capitalize on the moment, and grow as quickly as possible. But Jesus reminds us that sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is say no to something you actually want, because getting it will require becoming someone you don't want to be. Jesus also pushes this observation a step further, suggesting another possibility we have to explore. What if you're climbing the wrong mountain altogether? Later in Matthew's gospel, Jesus asks one of the most haunting questions in Scripture. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? That's why direction matters more than speed. As I get older, I'm increasingly convinced that success isn't reaching the top. It's reaching the place God has called you to go without losing the person God has called you to be. So my climbing advice: choose the slow mountain. What I'm reading: Ken by Tayari Jones. I know you're probably tired of me recommending this book, but it's ranked number 1 on Amazon's best books of 2026 for a reason. If you don't read anything else this year, read this book. What I'm listening to: as part of my podcast studies, I've taken an interest in Behind the Diary, entrepreneur and podcaster Stephen Bartlett's behind-the-scenes look at his life and the making of his massively successful podcast, The Diary of a CEO. He describes it as the kind of content he wishes he had when he was starting out, which is exactly why I find it so valuable. What KS is up to: This past Sunday, I shared a standalone message, casting a vision for family discipleship. I'll post a link to our church's podcast, which is now on Substack as well, so you can check out the recap. This Sunday, we're gearing up for Vision Sunday, which we strategically hold on the fifth Sunday as a way to keep our hearts engaged with our mission. I'll also be announcing our theme for 2027. I can't wait. Following Jesus is hard. Subscribe to Work These Words with Sean Dreher to get help from a trusted guide.